Man, there we go, there we go. Hello everyone, this is Dragon Skies. We are just now getting online for game development and that good jazz. Um, yeah, not much to say other than glad it's finally summer. I could get off college stuff and glad to be back on the project. So today I didn't really have a very specific plan. Where we left off last time, we had quite a bit of stuff that was yet to be done. Um, and I think we're just gonna get on top of that and also maybe design some of the levels. So just opening up our Unity project here. We have last what thing we were doing is we were trying to create logic that would, in essence, if we could walk through a door, it will take us through the corresponding door instead of just dropping us off in the middle of nowhere. So hopping over into here, if I go through this door and I go out here, it's going to drop me right outside of the manor, as opposed to down here where we would normally start. And it works really well. Oh, hello, the cat 5225. Good to see you. When was this made? Yeah, we've had a lot of people kind of comment on that. We had a lot of developments over time since I last streamed. This manor here it was made by Abs, one of our artists, and well, I mean the exterior. The interior was primarily my doing, except for these paintings here. We had a lot of art updates and also some logic updates where we could walk through the doorways into new rooms and stuff. But yeah, it is the mansion. This is the first location in our game. So what we've been doing the last few streams is just piecing together how we want this all to look. So hello, the ruffian. Hello, Nathan Godsey. Thank you. Dang. Everyone is here. We're pulling a Smash Brothers moment, y'all. But yeah, so today we're going to shift gears a little bit from the artsy stuff, and I want to fix a couple of things that may not actually be obvious through the first playthrough, but it's an issue that I noticed pretty quickly after taking care of some of this logic. So if I start the game here and also get us a game view so we can actually play here. Add tab, game. Okay. Ignore that. I have no idea why the player was over there. Never mind. Don't ignore that. That's actually a problem. I think I remember. I think I might have left the player in the void for some reason. We're gonna go ahead and drag him back where he belongs. No need to struggle with random problems like that. But last time we made it so that if you walk through one door into from one scene to another, you exit in a place that makes sense. But the problem is if I were to play through this level and go into the moose combat, which we have set up in another room over here. If I walk through the door here, go up here, walk through the hallway, there's this guy who isn't really programmed to chase or do anything yet, but all it is if I run into him, it starts a combat. So the problem, though, is if I want to beat him up, right, finish the fight, gold, experience, all that good jazz, I don't appear in the same room that I started in, which is a huge problem, as you might imagine. Like, imagine how quickly that would break your immersion. But so the problem with the logic that we have right now is that I've programmed a system where these location nodes kind of communicate with one another and say, okay, if he walks out of this door, we want him to appear on the next door, right? But this enemy isn't actually he doesn't take you to a different location per se. He takes you to combat, which is a entirely different thing. So we need a different system to keep track of where the player was and bring him back. And I think I know how we could take care of that. So I guess the goal for the stream so far is to make it so if I beat up this moose, I will appear next to him where I was before instead of just here at the start of the level. That's the only major goal. After that, I think we're kind of just going to I don't know. We're just going to kind of wing it. I feel like we could do a lot of fun things with this. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to create a kind of a position that's attached to the moose. And this position, which I'm going to visualize it with this red dot here, this position, it's going to be where I want the player to appear after the combat. And I'm going to say like maybe to its left. And I think that's very simple. No need to overcomplicate that. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to give the game the capacity to kind of save where the player was beforehand. So we're going to get rid of all of this stuff here. And this is the complicated side that doesn't look as impressive as the manor. Man, this is why I took a long break during the school year to get my head back in order, because there's so much scripting going on behind here, man. Like every single one of these little sections here is a different script that usually has all of it going on. But anywho, we're going to hop into our encounter data manager. And what that is it's a way of saving things during combat. Like if I want the game to remember anything when you walk into a fight, like for example, who are the enemies that you're fighting, right? Like what are the rewards you're going to get? This manager takes care of that. It kind of memorizes everything that needs to be memorized for the combat. Did you all see the song? Yes, I did. I took a look at it. It was actually very solid, especially for a newer project. Like it's a lot of people I know don't actually incorporate the main elements of music into it. So I thought it was cool how there were chords and bass and everything going on there. It was very well done. Within the encounter data, we're going to want to save one more detail on top of all of these things, and that's going to be a position. And we're going to call it original player position. And very simply, all that this is going to do... Well, actually, I should probably... we'll figure out exactly the details of that later. But all that's going to do is it's going to save this position. And then afterwards, when the player comes back, he's going to automatically teleport to that position along with the partner. And the player won't know the difference. As far as they're concerned, they've been standing there the whole time. But, yeah. Cole was straight up rude buster. A little bit. There was a little bit of that, for sure. Of course, we actually have to find a way to save the position, though, because, like, it's kind of like we have a container, right? Which is the encounter manager. But we need something to actually put the position into that container so that we can kind of see... Yeah, no, it's like... never mind. I'm just going to do it. So, hopping into our overworld enemy here, he has a system here that has all of his data, right? This is the data that's going to be saved. The enemies, whenever I run as this guy, I fight a moose. Whenever I win, I get -5 experience and 20 money. Do I have a Patreon? I believe I set one up a while back. Let's see here. If I hop on to... in the side, I'm going onto my YouTube channel. I have a bunch of links towards things that I'm connected to, right? I have a Discord, I have a itch.io page, I have a Instagram page, a SoundCloud page. And the very last thing is Buy Me a Coffee, which is similar to Patreon, just a lot simpler. And also cozier. I really like it more. And I'm not like... I'm not like actually relying on funds from the game design process to... It's more just like coffee money. So if you like this kind of stuff, then yeah, feel free to hop on and support. I would greatly appreciate it. But I might set up a Patreon, though. I know that there's a lot you could do with that. That's, you know, not just limited to support. Like I could like share things with people who are supporters. I can like give special things. But yeah. It might be worth looking into, but at this point, too soon. I'm sticking with Buy Me a Coffee for the time being. But yeah. Alright, I think I have an idea. So in order to set up this position, I'm just going to create a very brief script here. Private transform. You like the sweet taste of darkness. Dang, that's quite a way to describe it. The worst part is you're not really wrong. I've always been a sucker for coffee. I really, really, really like it. Previous position. Transform. Yeah, it's not even that it really keeps me awake. I don't really have that going for me. It's just the taste. And a lot of people look at me weird for that, because it's like, either you drink... Most people drink it because they need it, but like... When I say it's just the taste, even the people who don't like it are like, "What are you talking about?" But yeah, these tutorials are awesome. A Patreon would be awesome. I'll look into it. Definitely once I get some time, because the problem with game design, right? It's not that. The problem with game design is that whenever I do stuff that's related to marketing and like Patreon and all of that, it's very helpful, but like it also takes time that I could be using to develop. So I don't know. It's not like I made an intentional choice not to set up a Patreon. I think that would be a good idea. But like as I'm just like a very small developer wanting to finish a project, it's if there's enough interest, I might just shift gears into that because that's a good idea. But check the thing I put and share your stuff. All right. In a short second, we got to finish programming this section here. So I'm going to make it so I can easily tell the computer where the position is. So on validate, whenever we add a new value here, then we're basically just going to tell the game here that whenever this this point that we set up next to the moose, the red dot, is moved and assigned, then we automatically just say, okay, this is where the player ought to be, and then just transfer that information there. So let's see here. On validate, encounter data dot, and this is the save data. Encounter data dot original player position is equal to the previous position transformed dot position. And that's a very long way of saying that every single time I assign this dot to this moose, the moose will remember that this dot is where the player is supposed to be after the combat. And so last thing we have to do is we have to take our point here, and I'm just going to rename it into original position. And I'm just going to drag it into this field that we just made, which is right here. And just like that, the original player position value down here changes exactly to where I want him to come. So something to remember is this will only work if nothing is moving around. So if the moose is moving around the room, and then no matter what, the player will just appear at this point. So the moose remembers your violences. Dude, he deserved it, okay? He was giving me so many problems. He was like literally vanishing into the void for no reason whatsoever. There was no good reason. I had to take out my anger somehow, literally. But seriously, this guy, man. We have a lot of history, him and I. Ooh, the last thing that we need to do. I want to create a script that actually moves the player after a combat. I don't know exactly how to do that. Because we're only going to want to teleport the player here if a combat was just finished. Right? We don't want to do that if a combat has been... If we're not in combat, right? Because if we're not in combat, we already have a node system that takes care of that. It's just not something we have to worry about. He was seeking help from the Void Coffee. Well, I mean, it's no coincidence that all of our items are somehow named after coffee, to be fair. We're really excited about that, though. There's a gimmick that's going to be around. Instead of having like a shop system, we're just going to have a bunch of cafes, and there'll be an inside joke that I could elaborate on more later. But let's see here. We're going to reassign this one more time so that the position actually updates. And there we go. So all that happens here, whenever I start a combat with this moose here, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm actually just going to move the player into that room to start with so I don't have to walk all the way over there again and again. So all that happens when I start a combat here, and yes, I am spamming. Well, okay, here's the thing. You can spam the chat, I guess. I'm not going to respond to a lot of those messages, though, because like I'll like look over and every once in a while I'll say like, yeah, that's cool, you know, respond to a message. But if you're just texting me a lot, I will reserve the right to just like get focused again. Not that I don't care, but just more that gotta make games, you know? So if you're sending a lot, I will only check every once in a while. Something to expect. Okay, so don't be confused there. It did not work. So if I move the player over to the side here, wherever the player is, there you are. So every single time this scene starts, by default, the player appears in this room. Okay, and whenever I finish this combat here, if the system were working the way we wanted it to, the player would then appear right next to the moose, but he appears on the far side of the room. So what's going on is we are experiencing a problem. And the problem isn't that this stuff isn't saving, I don't think. The encounter knows where the player is supposed to be, but we don't have anyone who's using that information to move the player. So what do we do with that? So I don't know for sure, because I think the player himself shouldn't be responsible for that. I don't think. Should probably be some sort of a manager that's responsible for moving the player where he's supposed to be. So the question is what's the script that's actually handling this? Public void place player. So this is what's taking care of moving the player based on nodes, which is why we're able to walk through some doors and go into some areas and vice versa. But I don't know if we can tie it in. Because they're fundamentally different things here. No, I don't care for voice access. I don't know even why this is open. Yes, I want to close it now. Summon Spamton. Oh my gosh, man, the chat section. Oh my gosh. So, well, I'm going to open up Aspirite. We're going to do another brainstorming session to actually piece together what the heck we're doing here. So, we have our player, right? It's going to look like the Catan robber for some reason, because I'm too bored to actually draw something good. And this player, he has a default position, right? Which I guess we could describe as case 1, the default position. Do I have a text function? That could be peek. That could be really nice, actually. Looking around. It was on the bottom. Okay. Okay, and this default position... Can I make this any bigger? The default position is if there's no one else, that wants the player to go somewhere else, the default position applies. And that's already what's going on in the scene. And then there's a second position. If the player would just came from another door, there's specific positions. And I could highlight that here. And this is if the player is coming from any other door that has a configured position. So let's just increase this size. And then finally, there's returning from combat. And returning from combat is the third position circumstance. And I'm just going to highlight this. And increase the size. Okay, so we have the default position, specific position, like from another door, or returning from combat. And the key here is we have it so that we'll only do the specific position if required. So like there's a gate, I'll visualize that with a red line. A logic gate. If you're coming from another door, this triggers. Which, now we could kind of revisualize this. Instead of starting here, we have a logic gate here. Me not truly paying much attention and just causing absolute chaos. True. And then, so the first thing that's considered is this. Do we need to be somewhere specific? If we do not have to be somewhere specific, then we're going to branch off here. Do we need to return from combat? Of course, this also has a logic gate. And if that is not true, if we don't have to return from a combat, then we're just going to zip over to default. So there's like a logical train of thought here. And so let's see. Maybe like one script could be in charge of placing the player at the start then. And it has all of this logic. And we'll just visualize that with a circle. It's the script that decides, okay, where does the player have to be at the start of this scene? It's not like the player himself moving himself, so I think that this could be a good idea. We just have to make sure that it ties into all of these separate systems, like the system that's responsible for moving to specific positions, system that's responsible for returning the player after combat, and also the default. But the default doesn't really actually have a system. It's just the player was placed in the first place, right? Like, I showed that a little bit. So we don't even need to worry about a default system, quote unquote, because the default is just where the player starts. So let's go ahead and take this into scripting. We're going to make this into a manager. And managers are just a fancy way of saying the brains behind something happening. Like, it checks to see if things are true, and then it tells other scripts to do things based on whether they are. And sometimes they also hold data and stuff, so it's a long definition. But the managers are helpful, though, because they are able to... If I know that all of the thinking is going on in the managers and all the delegation, then I know if something needs to happen, I start with the manager. Whereas with like smaller things, I don't need to worry about it. So we're going to add in Unity. The location node library right now is what's assuming responsibility for our specific position logic. So as far as whether we could tie this into a larger manager, let's see. It has a reference to the player and all of its nodes, and it's, let's see. And then at the start of every scene, it places the player if the location save manager has a node active. In other words, if there's a place where he's supposed to be. So this would be the check. So if we wanted to make a overarching manager, right? If we wanted to make an overarching position manager, then we're going to need a script that does this check. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go into Unity and create a player placement manager. And that's going to go inside of our scripts. And right here. And we're going to create a script, and we're just going to name it after what we said before. Should I have any other characters invade your computer? Honestly, I don't have nearly enough brain cells to shenaniganize over random characters and fandoms right now. I'm pretty locked in. We're going to name this into our player placement manager. Oh, please don't load in the middle of that. Why? Why? Okay, and we're going to open it. So before I actually even write a script, something good to do would be to actually like outline in comments, which is like pieces of code that don't actually do anything, they're just for me to read. I'm going to outline in comments what this is actually responsible for. When the level starts, so we start with the condition, right? Every single time the level starts, I'm going to want to place the player somehow. But before I place the player, what do I have to do? You have to determine whether the player needs to be placed somewhere. And there are two checks to this, right? There are two things we're trying to determine. Is the player coming from a door with a corresponding exit. And am I able to like tab this up? If so, move the player to the new door and reset the door flag. Okay, so, and then afterwards it's just going to be done there. But if it's not the case, is the player coming from a combat? So this will need a flag. If so, oh gosh, no, don't give me that code mode. Okay. If he is coming from a combat, then we're going to want to go to the position to save. Move the player to the position saved in the encounter data. All right, and what else is this script responsible for? I think it's really all. We're going to set the player... Well, actually, I don't think we even need to change anything there. So let's go ahead and actually code this now. So when it comes to the location node library, we don't actually want it to place the player anymore. We will steal this section though. And so, actually, we need to find a, I'm going to look up something over here. We need to get a, let's see. I suddenly got the idea to do Scratch, or to get Scratch. Scratch is a good call. I started out game designing on there far before I did anything on Unity, but honestly, if you do, that would be really cool. But let's see. Now we're going to go ahead and look up how to make a script run when a new scene is... Wait, hold on. I have an idea. Because our scene director has a way of doing that. Let's take a look here. So the scene director is how we're moving between the manor here and the outside of the manor. It knows when we're going to a new area. So we could make it do all the work for us. Scene director. Let's see, where's the search bar though? I'm realizing I'm going to need that. It's going to be under managers, so... And we're looking at scene director. There it is. Next scene instance, fade to black animator, all of this. But this has this function, change scene. Wait, what am I doing? Hold on. I'm wasting even more time than I needed to, because we don't even need to use the scene, man. You can't really hear the music? Okay, hold on. I could increase the volume of that. Yeah, cool. Alright, actually, we can make it even simpler. Every single time a new area like this is loaded, there is a game state, which I believe is the overworld state, that will always be inside of these overworld scenes. Inside of Awake, we can call a function that says, let's do it. So in Awake, we're going to, although I'm realizing I'm going to need to do some fancy coding in order to make this work. So I'm going to use something called game events, where this script kind of like acts as a loudspeaker that's like, hey everyone, we're going to a new area. And then these scripts hear the message and they're able to react. So we're going to go ahead and create a game event, I think it's called. Unity event. Let's see. Unity events. Let's take a look at this website. Game event class. Wait, actually, no, that's not. There's one that it already exists. So I'm not exactly sure why it's asking me to do more of this. All right. Okay, Unity events. Let's take a look at the API script. Jonathan Gotzi Y9N. Your mom goes to college. What? Oh my gosh, I've gotten my fair share of random messages inside of the chat. That's crazy though. What is this? What is this? That's not even technically true. I'm going to college. That would be weird if my mom was going to college. Aye. But we're going to look into the Unity events class. Oh my gosh, that message. So over here, it gives me an example of what this looks like. A Unity event is a thing where I could make a script say, hey everyone, this thing happened. And then all of these scripts that aren't even connected can be like, oh, hey, I want to do something when this happens. So, yeah, let's do it. So we're going to start by defining a Unity event, which I'm not exactly sure how these work. We're just going to figure it out. Mostly from me for bragging rights. That's true. You definitely do random shenanigans, the cat. It's a Napoleon Dynamite quote. Oh boy. Dude, it's been too long since I've seen Napoleon Dynamite. Or maybe it hasn't been long enough. I can't decide yet, because it's like... don't get me wrong, the humor is great. But also, I verbally cringe every single time I watch it. So it's like a tolerance thing, you know? Definitely a tolerance thing. At least in my mind. Okay, Unity event. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a Unity event. I think it's going to be public. And we're going to call it on overworld opened. And I think that's good. Now we're going to go into back into the research here. And now we have to define it as a new event. Okay, that's fine. And so, awake. If on overworld open is equal to null, in other words, if this event isn't actually defined yet, we're going to define it as a new event. So on overworld open equals a new Unity event. So now the last thing we're going to need is we're actually going to have to register a bunch of things into this. All right. But now I have to make some hard decisions, because in order to use this event, right, in order for... Wait, hold on. Never mind, I can just make it static. Because I'm only ever going to have one of these events. They're just going to trigger every single time we open a new scene here. On overworld open dot, and then we're going to look for... Can we call it as a function? We can't. No. It's non-evocable. That's not good. Okay. We're going to keep on guessing, guys. It says invoke. Okay. In that case, this will be pretty easy. So, whenever the scene wakes up, right, whenever everything gets started, we're going to call on overworldopen.invoke. So, in other words, every single time we start out our scenes here, whenever we walk into a new room, this script will announce to everyone, hey, we're walking into a new room, and that way we'll be able to place the player at the right time. So, okay. And this Unity event on Overworld Open, we're going to make sure that we actually... I have a better idea. Hold on. This shouldn't even be with the Overworld game state. It should be its own script. Wait, what if we used a manager for it? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Okay, hold on. We're going to go into manager, and we're going to create a folder, event manager. Hey, we're walking there. Hey, we're walking. Oh, that reminds me, this moose right here. Me and him have serious beef. He's technically from New York. I don't know how we're going to explain that in the lore, but I think we've decided after the first few sessions that this guy's a New Yorker. So, I don't know, the very spontaneous stuff, but he definitely has territory problems. Like, I really think it would be funny if this guy just randomly chose to fight you just because you were walking nearby him. Just like that whole, like, you know, if you're in, like, New York traffic and whatever, and, like, someone's driving over there and they all get all mad at you for it, and it's like, all I'm saying could be really funny. But we're going to create our event manager, and this is going to be really cool, I think, because I'm only ever going to need one of these, and they're going to be able to hold as many Unity events as I want, and I could access them from anywhere. So what that means is I could shout from across the room, quote unquote, that something is happening, and the script can respond from anywhere. I don't even need to make connections to these scripts. It's incredibly lore relevant, and he's Rudy's fourth cousin thrice removed. Okay, hold on. I would like to restate, this game has no... Wait, Rudy, hold on. I'm just going to make sure, because I don't know if my lore is failing me. Yeah, no, he is not Rudolph's third... There is no connection between this game and Deltarune. Look, I love Deltarune, I love Toby's games, but, like, a big part of this project is actually kind of, like, stepping away from making games that are too closely based on other people's projects. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Deltarune, I love Undertale, I love all of those things. But the thing is, there has to be a point where, hold on, public static, event manager, current. There has to be a point where I'm able to make games that are unique, you know? So I've done everything in my power to make something that's funny, like true to who I am and who my friends are. And maybe that has something to do with like some of my favorite gameplay styles, you know? Like, not that I'm hating on Deltarune, but it has to be like, we're working on like being just our own thing, you know? Fine, he's Rudolph's fourth cousin thrice. No, there's no connection to Rudolph. None whatsoever. None whatsoever. All right, Rudolph. Okay, Rudolph's fourth cousin twice removed. Okay, hold on. I can see that. I can see that. Maybe we'll make a joke about that. That only comes up if it happens to be like the holiday season. That could be... Ooh, that'd be really funny, like time-based jokes. Okay, so if current is equal to null, current is equal to this. Now, this script is going to... the first event that we're going to need is a public Unity event. And we're going to name it into Overworld... Player enters new overworld area. Okay, cool. So now we have public access everywhere to this event. So someone could like trigger it, and someone can say, okay, when this happens, do this. So that'll be good. Now inside of the overworld game state, instead of using a Unity event here of its own, we're going to get rid of all this. Instead, on awake, we're going to say events manager dot current dot player enters overworld dot area dot invoke. And on second thought, this should be start so that other scripts have a chance to actually like set their stuff up. So what this means is this script is going to basically say to everyone who's doing something once the player enters a new overworld area, when this condition is met, it's going to tell every other script that's waiting to do something then, hey, it's time. So the final thing we need to do is get rid of this. Okay, get rid of this. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Get rid of all of it. Delete everything. The player placement manager is going to have a function here. Public void place player. And in awake, well, I should say start, actually, never mind. In start, we're going to say Unity, well, events manager dot current dot player enters new overworld area dot add listener, and then we're going to add place player. And what that's going to do is, well, it's going to make it so every single time the new scene opens, we place the player. Man, I wish I had that resolved to stray from Toby. Yeah, it's see, I don't think it's like, it's hard because like being creative really is hard, especially like genuinely creative. It's a lot easier to take the great ideas that someone else have that inspires you and to use those to make something cool. And there's no shame in it. Like, look, even what I'm doing here, there's like a lot of influences from other games, right? You could probably even tell like look at even how the rooms work, right? Like, forget the poor animations, but like whenever you walk into a new room, there's like a box system where the rooms kind of like slide into one another. Guess where that comes from? That comes from Classic Zelda. Let's add Classic. The same thing. And, like, it's not to say that I'm trying to rip off Zelda at all. In fact, this game is fundamentally very different from Zelda. But, like, the other thing is, like, we get genuinely inspired by those around us. But, like, the difference, I think, is a little deeper than just that. Like, when you let yourself, like, be influenced but not driven by the ideas that you receive, right? Then you start creating something new. So with this game, I wanted to make a RPG game. That's all I knew for sure. Like, that's what I specialize in. That's what's the most fun for me. I wanted to make something that I would enjoy playing. That was the second thing. And I also decided, like, I'm going to have to make it totally unique. Like, I have to be the one that made it, because, like, bet you Toby Fox wasn't, like, looking for someone else's project when he made Undertale. He was just letting his own wild ideas run free. So it's like, that's the goal, you know? Do the same thing. Not for money, not because you want to have attention or anything, because it's just fun, you know? So, I don't know. And whenever you're willing to do that, and it's not really about all those things, new ideas usually come out of that. I don't know. But we're going to go ahead and keep on working with the overall game state here in the player placement manager. So this is where we're going to put our scripting for placing the player. So is the player coming from a door with a corresponding exit? And in order to know this, we're going to need a reference to the location node library. So location node library. So if and let's see here, I'm forgetting how we did it last week, because I know that we were the idea, if I still have it in Acebright, Let's see here. Do I still have it for my sprite? Not that. Not that. No. Yeah, no, I guess I don't have it. The idea is that every single door has a corresponding pair. And we need to find a way to compare the tags of these two different pairs. So, let's see what they actually give us, though, to compare these things. Let's see. Find node by ID. And, well, what's confusing me is where do we keep the node that's currently active? I don't know. I'm forgetting how I did this, so we're just gonna undo. We're gonna go ahead and get rid of this and throw that here. I'm just gonna totally rip off the script that we did yesterday because I'm lazy. Very lazy. Not really. Yeah, it's good to have just a little bit of... No need to reinvent the wheel, right? That's the big rule for game design. Like, if you don't have to do it in a way that's complicated, don't. Just don't. And now we're going to get a private game object player. So that way, because we're moving the player. How are we supposed to move the player if we don't have a reference to him? So, and inside of start, we're going to get a... Well, actually, we should do it in awake, because if we do it in awake, then we could do everything much sooner. But in awake, we're going to take our player and set it equal to... Even better. Instead of doing it in awake, we do it when we call the place player, because that's going to happen when the player enters a new overworld area. And we're going to get the component. Well, actually, not get component. It's going to be gameObject.findByTag. Player. Cool. Since one thing that'll be pretty different is the ending. Since, man, my idea for it's crazy. It's not a choose your own adventure, but there is going to be a true ending. You move them with your sheer willpower. Dude, it was so real, though. So many times I'll, be working on game design and stuff, and I'll, have this great idea, right? This super peak idea, oh my gosh, what if the player did a roundhouse kick into the enemy's face? And then there was, a whole move sequence where, he punches and he blocks and then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm just a college student who happens to do a little bit of Unity. And it's but the feeling, though, when you have a good idea like that and you can see it is so real. Oh my gosh. And it takes a lot to kind of restrain that whenever I'm working on this. Because, gotta keep it plausible, but you have to make it fun too, you know? Okay. And now we're going to also need a function to clear the current saves from here. Because otherwise we're going to have problems. And we're going to give this function a new public void clear node data. So that way we could set the save node ID to -1. So that way we know, okay, there's no nodes that are saved anymore. Alright, and now we have this location node save manager dot current dot clear node data. Cool. Now that's taken care of. What this will do is it will move the player if we're moving from another building. But what if the encounter data says we gotta move the player back where he was before? So let's do that. I'm gonna say if encounter data manager dot current dot encounter data dot original player position not equal to null. In other words, if the player position from the earlier scene exists, then we want the player to go to that position. So player dot transform dot position is equal to, and then we're just going to take this mess of a name and throw it into there. And then we're going to set the encounter data's original player position to null, so that way it won't do it multiple times. But you cannot convert null to vector 2 because it's a non-nullable value type, so that's a problem. Well, how do we communicate, right, that we're not using that? I have an idea. Okay, let's try this. Let's go to our encounter data manager and make it so that the encounter data has a specific thing here. We're going to add a boolean, a true or false value, return player to original position, and we're going to say it to false. And if the player has to be returned to original position, then we'll do all that. Cool. And with that, I think that's everything for the script. Now, whether it will work, that's a very different question. We're going to go into Unity and take a look at some stuff here. Unfortunately, I'll make the fourth and final book a lot longer. All I'll say about what will make it crazy is you, yes, you will come in. You as in the reader or you as in me? Because I don't know, man. I'm a plot twist in real life. Putting me in a book sounds like a mistake. Mostly kidding, but yeah. So, in order to test this, what we're going to need to do is we're going to make it so that the enemy will mark the player return value. So going into here, this data here, return player to original position, set it to true. The reader. Okay, yeah, I figured that it was probably something a little more general. Yeah, but that's classic, dude. I think that'll be really cool, especially as a plot twist. Okay, so now we're going to attack this guy. And first problem, I should be right here. I'm not, so that's a problem. Punch. Okay. So we're having a problem. Let's double check here. Overworld state, the event manager.current.player enters new overworld area.invoke. That doesn't exist right now, so we'll make it exist. Player enters new overworld data equals new Unity event. Okay, that should fix all the problems there. So let's restart the test. So what should come out of this is a robust system where if I trigger a combat with an enemy, then, well, I'll appear right next to him after the combat. If I walk out the door, I'll appear out of the door. If I walk into the door, I'll appear on the other side of the door. So I'll punch this guy. Okay, and we have another error. I think I know what it is. The actual object doesn't exist. So I need to actually create these managers. I've coded them all. I haven't actually created them as objects in our game, so we're gonna have to do that really quick. So we're gonna go into our managers and like add a couple more game objects. So the first one is gonna be events manager. And I'm just gonna throw an event manager into here. And you can see here, this is full of events that you could invoke. So when something happens. So Do we need anything else? I'm just gonna assume we don't and see if it works. Really bad idea, but like still. You can't know there's a problem until the computer's on fire. That's what I like to say. Alright, now full screening this. We want this guy to fight us. We punch him. I win. Oh my gosh, this is such a big deal. And then we get yet another error. Okay. I'm not. Let's see what the computer's yelling at us for this time. So, the variable previous position transform of the enemy encounter trigger has not been assigned. Okay. I'm pretty sure it is assigned, actually. Yeah, it is. It's very much assigned. Yeah, no, it's like... There shouldn't be a problem. Unless maybe the problem is something that has to do with the object getting destroyed. Well, let's change a couple of things here. That might fix this. And that's going to be inside of the enemy. Where are you? Where are you? Enemy data script. Enemy encounter trigger. That's actually it. And then we're going to create if Unity editor. In other words, I don't want this to even come up if we're not in the editor. Okay. Let's try one more time. Hopefully it will work. Okay, so let's just take a look around, see if anything's actually going wrong here. So it says that the original position is assigned. But it also says that it's not. Double checking if I do the combat. Okay, well, let's at least double check and see if I can walk through the door. Without any errors. Don't ignore that. Ignore that! Ignore that! This is a fully functional game. I'm kidding. This is actually, that has quite a few problems, actually. Okay, wow, that's... Wow. That, oh no. This is even worse than I thought, because I should have been here. I am a little confused, guys. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. Man. What do you do with that? Yeah, guys, I'm a tiny bit confused because I feel like this should have worked. Let's see, though. Unassigned reference. It says here. The problem is still here. That's just annoying. This is the last part of the... You know what? Here's what I think. We just get rid of this. It was something to make our lives easier, but if it's just throwing errors, we don't want it. So first thing out the window. Next thing is, what is going on down there? Nothing anymore, apparently. The secret final battle should be the BC and God judging you for all the Mucin you've beaten up. Oh my gosh, dude. No. No. Not only would that break every single barrier we've set inside of the game lore, it would also just... Bruh. Bruh. That would be really funny, but... Oh my gosh. So it's just not doing anything. At all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check and see if the manager that's responsible for moving the player is actually able to do anything right now. If I go into the, let's see, managers scene here. Right here we have the events manager. And here's a big problem. This doesn't actually have any functions, so I'm not exactly sure why. Although, I might know. Okay, player placement manager. Do we actually have a player placement manager in our scene? There should be a route where the final boss is a bowl of ramen. Dude, okay, I take this game a little more seriously than that. I mean, like, inside jokes, yes, let's do it. I love that. Maybe I'll even throw some ramen in, because that sounds funny, but man, a bowl of ramen as a final boss? This sounds like a cooking game. This is not a cooking game. Oh my gosh. It's a lot of things. A coffee game? Maybe. Arguably, it's a coffee game, but, like, a cooking game. Nah, bruh. Nah. We're gonna give this guy a player position manager. Yeah, placement actually makes more sense because position means that it has constant control. Placement means it has partial control. And for some reason, this script is named New Mono Behavior Script. So we're gonna fix that. Good. Oh, beans. No, don't say beans. This is not a cookie game. No beans. No beans. Alright, so we need to put this in this scene and also in every other scene that has something to do with the overworld. So that would be this. Player placement manager. I'm going to add the player placement manager over here too. Now inside of the manager, let's try this again. Chat. We have a grand total of 0 errors so far. Now we have 1, but it's probably one of the side errors that you could just ignore, hopefully. Never mind, it's not a side error that we could ignore, chat. Okay, it's unfortunate. Why is this script always throwing me problems? I'm not exactly sure. Okay, well, here's what we can do. We could check and see if it works if I move the player to the front of the house. It did more than just not work. It threw me out there. Ah, okay. Man. What is this? Okay, one thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna retry this project. And we're gonna look at the manager and see if it actually has any logic going on. says that it doesn't. That's a lie. Because this script here should be telling it that it needs to do some stuff the moment a new overload scene is loaded. And are you sure this game is too serious for that? The Misa no New Yorkin. Well, it's like not... It's not pure... Okay, I guess that's a fair point. There are funny parts, that's for sure. But, like... There, at the same time, there's also a degree of... Like, this stuff has to make sense, I guess. Like, make sense to a degree. Maybe satirically speaking, like, or just for, like, fun, like, there could be some wild randomness, but I don't want it to be so distracting that you don't actually end up enjoying the game, if that makes sense. So, like, Ramen Bowl Boss, that's great if you're making a game that's entire style is, like, about fun, dorky, cute, or, like, that kind of stuff, like cooking. That's the kind of game where I would put that. But for this game specifically, it's like a mix of fantasy and detective work, right? That's just the key reference. And the sense of humor that's present is mostly themed after RPG games from the SNES and other systems. So like it just doesn't make sense, I guess, to throw in a ramen bowl as a boss in that circumstance, because when it, like maybe having the ramen bowl as an item would make sense. Because yes, like cheeseburgers were a healing item in Earthbound. Like, that matches the humor we're going for. But when it comes to... Well, I don't know. It is, to an extent, arbitrary, because this is all about being creative. But, like, you know, you gotta, like, think about what you're looking for. And what we're looking for here is, like... Well, actually, this has been a point of contention between me and Musical Virus. Not, like, actually, like, we're angry at each other or anything. Not at all. We are both really excited about the project, but like I like having games that are very serious at times and also very funny at other times. I really like deep messages. I really like it when a game really makes you think and like feel things. He just wants to make a very lighthearted, like hero beats villain kind of a thing, and so I'm deciding kind of just to have the serious stuff go on the back end, but like to an extent, this is all arbitrary. We're kind of just deciding as we go, but like I guess like when it comes to humor, there's a way to do it, and if it's too wild, it kind of loses its wittiness, I guess. And you are sure this game is too... Oh, that's the same message. Never mind. It's definitely not too serious, but at the same time, the humor is very focused, is the best way to put it. So, we're still experiencing some problems over this script here. I'm kind of curious as to whether it's actually doing anything, because, like, it has all the instructions that it needs, but it's not doing anything with it. So, let's go ahead and do a couple debug.logs to see if things are actually happening. Alright, so if it does this first part, it will yell, "I'm not useless," and then if it goes to this part, it'll say something like "moving player," because that's actually something I wanted to be specific about. Add the bowl of ramen and add the message. If this was a different game, it would beat you up. That's really clever, but at the same time, it's also an inside joke. So you have to be careful with those. Like, if I took every single funny thing that happened in these streams and made it an item or a moment in the game or something, it would be hilarious for 5 people, and then the rest of the 2,000 people that tried the game will be like, "What the heck are you talking about?" You know? So it's like, yeah. I'll think about it, though. Ramen would be a really fun item. Okay, let's see if the script says anything. I'm not useless. It said it. It said I'm not useless. But then it didn't do the thing. What does that mean? It means that did the start sequence, and it added a listener. Let's try putting it in awake. Maybe that'll fix something. I would say most times I say to add something, take it as a joke. Okay, yeah, cool. Oh, that's valid. That's valid. Honestly take this a little too seriously. Well, never mind, actually. If you saw a lot of the things I've done to this prototype yet, you would definitely call me a liar on that one, which is probably valid. But let's see if this works. Hold on. Guys, I think we did it. If I try leaving the manor. Dang, dude. Hold on, we got it, guys. If I fight the moose here. Punch! I come back here. But if I go through the door down there, I appear over here. Dang. Dudes, we did it. Dang, let's go. I'm 27 minutes behind. Loving your thoughts on true creativity. Thanks. I yap a lot. Especially the things you do with the Mies. Also, would it be putting... Hold on. Would it be legal to put missing no in the game? Especially the things you do. Missing no. Hold on. Let me look this up. I'm thinking it's either a Pokemon or a Deltarune enemy. I'm not exactly sure. Let's double check. Yeah, Pokemon knew it. So, legally speaking, generally it's not. If a larger company has the copyright to something and you create content about it, there's some protections that you get. Like, for example, if I wanted to make a satirical video about a game that's just making fun of it or something, or if I wanted to stream a game, I have certain legal protections. But on the other hand, if I try to make a game and make money off of that game that uses characters from another franchise, I could get in serious trouble. So it's not always the case that you can get in trouble for using copyrighted characters, but it can be. Which is where, like, I generally tend to say, no, don't. Not because... I mean, unless you're, like, doing something that's not going to make you money or just for fun, right? Like, if I draw pixel art, for example, like, I could draw whoever I want. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and draw as many Inklings as I want. I'm going to draw some dragons from, like, The Hobbit. Like, that's not a problem. I'm going to go ahead and steal characters from every franchise I can think of for fun. But, like, when it comes to, like, if I'm making money off of it, I can get in a lot of trouble. So, I err on the side of caution when it comes to that. So, dudes, we figured it out. So, it's all done. Especially the things you do with the Mies. Dude, the inside joke with the moose is that I think that's one that I'm going to keep. I love the idea of it being a New Yorker, because that could be something that really helps with the entire vibe of this scene. So, like, this manor, right? This manor is kind of a bridgeway between the quote-unquote normal world that the protagonist is used to and the magic world that he's basically being transported into. So the entire idea behind it is that it's supposed to be normal enough that you could say, oh yeah, it's a, probably Victorian era, like, English manor. But then when you walk in, you see things that are weird. And it kind of leads you into the point of, man, hold on, is there something that I should be expecting, Really, the thing that makes me even consider it is that it's a glitch. The moose had so many glitches when I was making it, dude, though. It was so traumatic. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I was streaming YouTube at the time. I did Twitch for a while, but it was just weird, and also none of my fans were there, so I just decided to leave. But like, yeah. This, suffice it to say, that moose was really, really funny. But all right, so I'm wanting to do a little bit more. So we're gonna extend for just a little while longer, and I'm gonna show you guys what I'm thinking. So here's what we have, right? We have a functional manner. We have a combat system that works. We have all sorts of good things that could lead up to a prototype. There's one thing that I want to add as well, though, for the sake of the manner. Oh gosh, that was an error. We'll fix that. But down here, we have this whole area, right? And you see, notice here, there's like a pit, just a void here. We're wanting a staircase. So what I want to do is I want to go and design some stairs really quick. So we're actually going to go hop on ice, right? And I'm going to get to show you guys a little bit of my creative process here. We're going to hop over to this here. So this is where I actually designed all of the tiles for the manor. And these are all like unlit, so they are very... they look a little more pure, so to speak. But yeah. So what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to give myself more room to work with. We're going to go to sprite, canvas size, and we're going to give myself like plus 32, plus 32, plus 32. Yeah, we're going to give that much. And then I'm also going to anchor it to this side, so that way I can have more room here. And then on the background, I'm just going to give myself some more black to work with. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into the floor and set up a few more of these floor tiles. And then I'm going to get some more wall tiles up here. And this will represent kind of what you guys saw earlier. And we're also going to steal a... Actually, we'll leave that. So, for the stairs, like, let's actually look at a reference of some stairs. And stairs top view. And I'm just going to kind of see what stands out. So here's some line art that's really cool. Now look here. We're only looking for straight stairs, so we don't need anything too fancy. But like right here in the middle, there's some stairs that would work for that. Let's see here. And then this has a little too much perspective, so I'm just going to ignore that one. And yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of having like polished wooden stores or stairs. Why did I say stores? What the heck? So we'll keep this one in mind. No, I think that this is enough to go off of, actually. I'll just use that as a color reference, because stairs aren't really that difficult. Their entire look is very simple. So we're going to create a new layer. And a layer just lets me edit certain things differently from one another, so I don't need to worry about making huge mistakes with, and then having to redo an entire tile. So yeah. We're going to start by just creating basic layout. I'm going to say, like, we're going to do... If this is 32 by 32 pixels, we want something that's divisible by 32. So, when it comes to that, let's see, what's 32 divided by 6? Does that divide in? Let's go to calculator. I'm pulling it up on my phone. 32 divided by 6 is equal to... That does not divide in equally, so we're going to try 32 divided by 8. Me studying calculus only to proceed to know nothing the moment I start game designing. Ay. So if we do 8 tiles wide, it will divide in equally. So let's try that. No, I actually don't like that very much. Hold on. Let's try this. My idea is that the 7th area, you could buy a food item, creepypasta, and if you eat it right by water, you'll get in a battle with a missing no. After you catch him in the net, it causes the world. I think you missed a word or two there. It's a glitch, and they have to fix it. Should be interesting. All right, now we're gonna tile it up and down. What this is gonna do is this is gonna give me a view that I can actually work with a lot better. So if we try this, I think this was not high enough. Now, if you look at this, this looks good. Like, it looks like bars, literally. So now I'm gonna steal a little bit of this darker color, and we're going to color it in here. And something you'll probably notice immediately is that this stair looks a little off. We're just gonna do that. Which the word limit side, no worries, dude. We're gonna do that. And we're gonna do that. These look like stairs, but I also kind of want to shift it so that it makes more sense. There. So these are not fancy. I'll start by saying that. But the point isn't really that they are fancy. The point is more that they're functional. Actually, we're going to make it so that the bottom here is the thing here. Okay, this should work. So I'm going to duplicate these here. And we're going to turn this into a tile map. So that way I can place some like tiles. So we're going to convert to tile map. And don't need to name anything here. And if I move these up, first thing you'll notice if I zoom out, which by the way, zooming out is a really great way to tell if something works. If I even open preview here, it sort of makes sense, but like it also looks so similar to the floor that it's hard to tell the difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use even darker colors to convey this. Let's try that. Okay, if I look here, it does look a little bit off still. So we're going to also darken the top steps. I feel like that's too much too. Yeah, let's see that. Now if I look here, if you look at this, it makes sense. Like if I look, just looking at this, just looking at the preview here, like if I zoom out and you look here at this scene, like it's blurry. It's even blurry on my screen, but you can tell like, hey, these are probably stairs. But like, let's check one more thing though, because we want to make sure it makes sense in proportion. If I move my player over here and set him to the top layer so that way he's actually standing on top. If we move the player there, does it look like he could be walking on this? Does it make sense? And I would say, yeah, that does make sense. So, is it fancy? Oh, heck no. It looks actually pretty rough around the edges. But does it look like stairs? Yeah, it conveys the idea. So that is all I'm looking for right now. I am not the game's primary artist. I just want to make something functional. So whenever I design something for the game, all that I'm worried about is making it so I can see that is stairs. That's all I need. So let's go into Unity. We're going to double check and see what we need to do here to get these imported. So going into the manor, I'm also going to like scroll over here to where the stairs are. In order to import art, you have to do a couple things in Unity, and it's quite a process. But just double checking here. Where did the manor tiles go? Hold on. We're going to double check that. Right here. It looks like I exported it as its own thing, so we're going to do that one more time. We're going to file, export as, and I only want to select stuff that is selected if it's possible. Area selection, resize. I don't want to resize it, I just want it to be 100%. Because the original size is ultimately what works best inside of Unity, so I don't ever make it bigger or larger. And then there's no animation really, so we don't have to worry about that. Area selection, visible layers. Yeah, and we want to make sure we export it into somewhere where I'll find it. So I'm honestly probably gonna put it into our Dropbox. Me and the gang have a collective Dropbox where we leave all of our stuff. So yeah, we're gonna name it stair tile and export and PNG. Yep. Now I'm gonna go into my file explorer and go into the Dropbox and check out the tiles. Now I'm gonna take this stair tile and throw it in with the rest of the manor stuff just so I can keep it organized. And I unfortunately can't just use it at this point. I have to do a couple of things. I'm gonna set it to 32 pixels per unit because that's what I drew it in, 32 pixels per unit. And then I set a couple of settings down here. I set the filter mode to point and the compression to none in order to make it look really good as a pixel. Now, I'm a little bit confused as to why the stairs aren't rendering. Yeah, I'm a little confused. Let's see, if I press this... It fixed itself, apparently? I don't know. Well, we'll just leave it. It's working. There's no reason for me to mess with it anymore. So, now we're going to go into the tiles, go into manor tiles, and we're going to find our stair and just drag it in. And this is such a simple tile that I just don't have to worry about anything here, dude. I'm just leaving it. If it's working, it's working. And I'm going to throw it into the manor tiles asset. And we're going to put this here. And I honestly don't feel like we need to put it all the way up, so let's just erase a couple. And if I play, let's see what it says. Walking through the hallway, going down. This remix, though, you talking about the remix of Snowman from Earthbound? Dude, that's one of my favorite old RPG game songs. I love it. But if we look into here, we have working stairways. Now, the one thing I would say is I wish it was closer. So let's actually do some designing here. Now that I have the tiles, I get to do whatever in the world I want with them. I can just take this wall here, and let's move it over a pixel. Okay, but like this wall's tight now, so we're going to do the same thing. I'm a little confused as this one isn't erasing, so we're going to do overhead, double check, and there we go. And floor. We're going to add these. Ooh. Hang on, guys. What if we tried... I'm going to move the player into this area so that way we can twist quickly just see what everything looks like. What if we tried making it so that the stairs are just in the wall there? Nothing fancy. I don't like that like crazy. Let's add a couple of things here. Maybe like step it back a little bit. I don't know. I don't really like that depth. I think that we go back to what we were trying for earlier. So I erase this and this and this and this. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to place one of these walls. Maybe first, before I do anything else, what I do is what in the world? How did I place all of those? First, we're just going to place the stairs, see what those look like. Or how we want them to look, I should say. Okay, I'm a little bit concerned about why are those wall bits stacked on one another like that? Okay, it looks like they vanished. That's good. So with the floor, we're going to want to erase this. Erase these walls. We have no obligations here. There's nothing that we have to do. It's all based on what we want to see. So this half of the room, which I'm going to move the game camera over so that's actually focused on the player. We want to be able to see in our preview what this looks like. And that'll be the main camera. Come on, game camera, move over. What are you doing? There we go. So this side of the room is empty. There's nothing going on. We need to make a stairwell. And the stairwell, pretty unanimously, is going to be going upstairs. We don't need to argue over that. That's very obvious. So I'm going to add some stairs to the floor here. And let's see what that looks like. Okay. Next thing, we want this to be a stair tile, not a floor tile. Because the floor tile is boring, first off. And second off, not a stair. So there's that. Banish the walls from existence. Dude, we have the power! We have the power! But yeah, and then we could add walls here, maybe. Actually, hold on, I don't like that very much. Let's just put this here. Maybe. I like that. Now we're just gonna add some walls down here. And now this is the part where I test to make sure that it's actually working. Because there are times where it doesn't actually, where the colliders don't work just like that. And you have to actually set those up separately. So we're going to go into invisible walls, which is where I make up for collider problems. And we're just going to draw a line there. And just like that, the wall is totally solid. We're not getting through there. We're not going to walk up the stairs. And we don't want it to actually leave at this point. The player shouldn't be able to walk out like that. We're actually going to transition into a new scene. So, get this out of the way. And this is what our scene looks like now. Now, as far as the lighting goes, I don't think that we have to do anything here. But in here, it really is dark. So maybe we're going to get a couple more candles out. So in Unity, there's this thing called a prefab, which is a thing that you could copy a lot. Kind of like the tiles that I'm using, but they also could do stuff like shine lights and whatever. So we're going to use that. So that's going to be in the manner folder and candle. Now, we're going to set this candle's level at the same as this one. So negative 1.5, we're going to copy that over. Want this one to be negative 1.5. And I'm just going to copy and paste. But something I noticed is that if you open this up, it seems like these guys are really close. They're not even symmetrical. So let's fix that. And now we're going to want this to be a little further to the left. And it looks better, still doesn't look great. So for now, I think that this is a good start. I need to figure out the lighting situation better. But this room looks like it's finished. At least as far as a prototyping perspective goes. So now what we want to do is we want to make it so that the player could actually walk out of here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create invisible walls that stop the player from going too far out here, because he will walk into the void. Let's double check and see what that's about. That's good. What this does is it makes it so that the player doesn't accidentally break the game and stuff like that. One thing I'm thinking of wrestling with is trying to make one of my characters not just Susie. Well, characters are interesting. It's hard to come up with characters that you think you really connect with and that you're really compelled by. But maybe I could even talk through some of the stuff that we did with our characters, you know? Okay, here's our detective character, right? We started with an idea, and usually that's how it goes with characters. With a detective, right, we pictured a hero. That was just our very first thing. Me and Musical Papyrus were talking about it one day at my old school, and we decided, yeah, this guy, he's a really good guy. He's really, handsome, smart, he's a good brawler, that kind of stuff. Because we wanted him to be a hero, but we didn't know he would be a detective at the time. And I was like, okay, but well, how do we make him unique? And I also started talking to him about this idea that I had for another character who was actually going to be a dragon at the time. And I was like, yeah, it's this gal, she's a detective, right? Who's trying to clear her name because people accused her of stuff, right? And he's like, what if we made our protagonist into a detective? So it was kind of wild, actually. And, this guy, right, he's a blank slate as well. That's something that Duncan wanted, because, that's being one of our testers. But me and Musical Papyrus considered it really well, and thought it was a good idea as well to have him a blank slate, just because that really is a head nod towards, older Paper Mario games, and that kind of stuff where the protagonist doesn't talk. But, yeah, a long story short, a lot of things came together, but we started with an idea, and it's okay to start with an idea like Susie, right? The important thing is that you don't stop there. That you keep on letting the character grow and develop into something new. Right? And that's actually something that we're working through right now, because this character has such a strong reference point from Sherlock Holmes. The classic detective, the brilliant guy, whatever. And I've been constantly trying to think of ways to make him more than that. I want him to be someone that usually is a lone wolfer, who learns that he has to ask people for help and become more of a commander than a independent worker. That's a character point that's new. And he's also a human in a fantasy world, so there's a lot of cool connection points for that. But, yeah, a lot of things like that can come together if you just take your character, the basis, even if that basis is Susie from Deltarune, right? And you just keep on letting it grow and develop until it's not Susie anymore. It's someone that you've made, you know? I mean, of course, Susie, unlike Lucifer, isn't the child of the Dark Lord, unless she turns out to be the Master's daughter, but This is another Delta... If this is another Deltarune lore drop, I am not interested, dude. Not that No hate on people who come up with Deltarune theories. They're smarter than I am in some cases. Either that or way dumber than I am, depending on which theorist you ask. But, when it comes to the theories, Toby has made it so clear in the past that his characters cannot be predicted. They just can't. If you try, you're going to be wrong. It's just how it is. But yeah. Focusing up, guys. Focusing up. Here's what I'm going to do. We have our stairway working, but we want to be able to go to the next level. So, let's work on that. In order to do that, I'm going to copy this scene. And we're going to call this next scene Manor Level 2. Or Floor 2. And right now it's just the same. But what I think is I'm going to get rid of all of these candles and most of the stuff. Including all but the first camera zone. And we're going to get rid of these because this is a new area. And with that, I think everything's done. Although I do want to delete a bunch of stuff. But what's important isn't how this room looks per se. We're going to redesign it at some point to be its own floor. But the point here is we need a new area that the stairs will lead to. So let's do that. I'm going to erase everything here, except for the first room. And now we're going to get rid of the floor. Yeah, I don't think Susie's related to me either. Yeah. Now we're going to get rid of all this. Doink, 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 doink. Get rid of this. Doink, 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 doink. And we're going to get rid of all of these. And then we're going to get rid of the top walls as well. And I'll even like simplify the floor so it doesn't feel like the same room. But alright, we're going to get rid of this carpet. And instead of the player coming up here, we're going to actually close this wall. And we're going to set the stairs to come up from this side here. And again, we're just going to have a wall that leads down here. Floor, stairs, down. And if I move the player back into this room here, let's see what it looks like. And camera target, move over, please. Thank you. That kind of works. I think it could look better, but I'm happy with it for now. Alright, I'm going to call it right there. We don't need to make the room any fancier. And then we're going to make a wall, invisible wall. Right here. And then I'm going to add this to the build here, which is a fancy way of saying I want you to use it a whole lot. So we're going to actually add it to the project instead of just making this a workspace. And now we're going over to the manor. And we're going to go into our prefabs. Remember how I mentioned those earlier? How you could copy stuff over with them? And we're going to create a door, which is something that isn't literally a door. What it does is it transfers from one scene to another. So, assets, prefabs, door. It's all set here. And then we're going to move over to Manor, floor 2. Now we just got to double check and make sure that's actually the name of the scene, because it would be really bad if it wasn't. Cool. And of course we're also going to want this door to have a unique location node ID. And in order to make sure that it's unique, we're going to check every other door to make sure. Okay, so this location node is 1. And when the player returns, we're actually going to put him at the floor of the stairs. Now we have to set up the connections on the other side. In order to do that, we're going to go back to our prefabs. Door. And then we're going to, it's already set to the manor, which is good. And we're going to set the ID to 1. So now it'll only come into the first area. Okay. Now, inside of the manor, moment of truth. This works whenever every single time we press the interact button, it will let us walk up the stairs all the way. Ideally, we're going to make that happen in other ways. Okay, well, now, first issue. I forgot to configure something. These nodes actually have to come into the location node library. So we're going to configure that on both sides. Cool. And the ID is correctly set, so we're good. Now we go into the manor. And if everything works correctly, this should be our final test. All right. It's all working. Although there is one problem. Whenever we right click or whenever we interact with the door, you can do it multiple times, which causes the scene to retrigger multiple times. And then we suddenly end up in the default place. So we'll piece that together. But yeah. For now though, I think that I'm gonna call it quits. We had a lot of good stuff done today, so yeah. To everyone who joined me, thank you so much. We got a whole lot done, and you guys really helped me stay accountable on this stuff, and also kind of excited, and also not boring. So I really appreciate it. If you want to support me, the channel, my entire studio, subscribe, tell your friends about it, like buy me a coffee, that kind of stuff, and just keep on keeping up with these videos more than anything else. I love having y'all. But yep, subscribe, and also would love to keep on supporting the videos too. I don't know. There you go. See y'all.